right. All right. Welcome to our Wednesday Yin. I'm Cam. We're going to use all the things. So we're going to use bolster. We're going to use 2 blocks or, some nice big books so you can prop yourself up. Pressure release ball, or you can use your bolster for that. And we're going to use a strap like a seat belt today to give us a little bit more options to play with. So let's start seated and close down the eyes, sit up nice and tall, and let's start to arrive into our bodies, arrive into our practice. All right. Close down the eyes, and as you do, start to anchor your seat by gently tucking the tail into your bolster and lengthening your spine. So you're getting nice activation, a gentle lift like you're floating on a cloud, but dropping the anchor through your seat like the string tying you to the ground. Noticing the breathing now. So is it deep? Is it rhythmic? And start to lengthen the breath in and out through the nose until you find a nice gentle rhythm that feels full but not uncomfortable. Nice way of doing that is just add an extra second to the inhale and the exhale every round so that then it softly grows. And a nice way of adding to the breath is imagine there's a beautiful perfume, an exquisite scent, and you're just trying to savor every last millimeter of that beautiful smell. With your eyes closed, your drishti is on the tip of the nose or the eyebrow center, and this starts to stimulate Mula Bandha, pelvic floor. Again, giving us the lift while giving us the anchor. And setting our intention this week, we're exploring equanimity. So the balance in the eye of the storm when we feel attraction or aversion towards things in life. Taking one chant of Om to begin. For Om chanting, big breath in. Gently wriggle the fingers, open the eyes. So the first one that we're going to do today is vagus nerve release, which we're going to use the eye stretch, but I'm going to add to it today. And the way I'm going to add to it, if you take your fingers and you find the center of your skull, and then your thumbs come down to the side of your ears, and we're going to massage around the top sides of the ear, the back and the front, and then we're also going to massage down underneath the earlobe, and we'll get to that in a minute. So before we do that, hands on the knees, and then take your chin all the way over to the right, and notice how far the rotation in your neck is over to the right hand side. Spot something on the wall so that you know how far it is, and then come back through center and look over to the left hand side as far as you can look. Mental note of how far your rotation is. Back into center. Nose points forward. Send the eyes as far to the right as you can till you get a stretch in the eyes. Fingertips in the middle of the crown of the head, and then gently massaging, gently, just so that you're moving the skin over the bone, either side of the top of the ear. We're going to add our 5 to 8 breathing. So breathing in for a count of 5. Keep stretching the eyes to the right. Try to look forward. Hold for 2. And out for 8. Breathe in for 5. Hold. And breathe out for 8. Massaging underneath the lobe of the ear now. Breathe in for 5. Take hold of the lobe of the ear and just gently tugging it down. Hold for 2. Out for 8. Keep looking to the right. Breathe in for 5. Hold for 2. And out for 8. Last one, grab the tips of the ears, gently pull it up. Breathe in for 5. Hold for 2. And out for 8. All right, gently let the eyes come back into center. My little microphone headpiece, I didn't think that through. It's a little harder to do the ear massage. I hope it's easier for you. So having a look over to the left side, the nose stays forward. Now the important bit is that you get as much stretch through the ocular nerve as you can, which means look as hard left as you can, and then hands into the middle of the skull and gently massaging the skin across the top, both sides of the ears. Breathing in for 5. Hold for 2. Out for 8. Breathe in for 5. Hold. And out. Keep stretching the eyes to the left, massaging down the back of the ear now if you haven't already started. Breathe in for 5. Hold for 2. And out for 8. Take hold of the earlobe. Gentle massage pulling down. Breathe in for 5. Looking to the left. Hold. And out for 8. Hold the tops of the ears. Breathe in for 5. Gentle massage. Hold. And out for 8. Last round, in for 5. Hold. And out for 8. All right, releasing the hands, release the eyes back to center. Now send your gaze over your right shoulder. Notice how much rotation there is in the neck. Oh my goodness, I'm looking to the back. And then back into center and having a look at how much rotation over the other side. Amazing. All right, I hope that worked for you as well as it did for me. Pressure release ball or bolster. Come to standing and take it underneath the sole of the right foot. We're going to roll the sole. So if you don't have a pressure release ball, you can just use the side of a block or a nice firm water bottle, like a steel water bottle. We're just massaging through the plantar fascia. So today's sequence, we're going to focus on releasing everything through the hips, hip flexors, external rotators. We're going to get a little bit of front line, a little bit of back line, a little bit of twist. So all the parts, and focusing on our theme of equanimity, which is week 3 of our 40 Days to Personal Revolution Challenge, which I've been running just by theming my classes rather than mentoring the process. But of course, that's my free gift to you guys. And what is equanimity? So to begin with, equanimity is a law of nature. This is something that when I first leaned into what this concept was, I felt equanimity was a very flowery concept around meditation of, self-control, about not being drawn to or away from things, about attachment and detachment. And I didn't have a lot of way into understanding that. But working with Dr. John Nutting, the psychotherapist, he talks a lot about this in the beginning of his courses to set a framework. And the framework that he talks about is that Equanimity is a law of nature. So when you create an energy, there's an equal and opposite energy, always. So in physical world, in the emotional world, intellectually as well. And we can see that playing out as a global nation at the moment. You know, the push by governments to try and protect us creates a pushback of people trying to create freedom where, in fact, we are always free. And it's just a perception thing. But anyway, it's a long conversation, but you can clearly see the push to and the push away starting to manifest in our outside worlds. All right, let's swap feet. So to begin with, equanimity is a law of nature that when there's an energy created, there's an equal and opposite energy created as well. Secondly, for this purpose, equanimity is, if you think of a pendulum, and these are things I like on this side, and then all the way over here on this side are things I don't like. And in your life, in your day, you swing between that pendulum to try and create the things that you want and run away from the things that you don't want. And that's called the pendulum of life. And that pendulum creates a lot of energy and takes a lot of energy to maintain. And right in the middle of the pendulum is equanimity. It's the ability to see the things we don't want and see the things we do, but to be able to choose how to act and how to respond rather than reacting like a knee jerk. You see a bright, shiny thing and you run towards it, or you see a horrible, nasty thing, you run away from it. So instead of being caught in flight and fight, or being caught in attraction and aversion, it's about being able to sit in the middle and then make the right decision rather than the comfortable decision. And it's important that we understand that as we go into today's class, that difference between discomfort and pain. So if you found pain, it's too far. Discomfort means growth. So discomfort means growth is happening, provided you're nicely supported. All right, so let's take that out of the way and come into rag doll. So if your spine doesn't like a rag doll, place the bolster over your belly and make a T-bar with your blocks so that you've got support. So placing the T-bar like so, bolster onto the tummy, and then folding the elbows onto the blocks so that you've got some support to release. Usually when you've got the bolster on the tummy, you're going to find that you're feeling quite supported. If that's still no good for your back, you could take a gentle forward fold where you place the bolster underneath the knees and then just taking a forward fold position. So otherwise, hanging in your ragdoll as our spinal decompressor. All right, and hang and release. So when you're in a difficult situation, when you're under stress, when you're under challenge, do you find it easy to make good decisions? Or do you find you get anxiety, overwhelm? Do you run and hide? There's your flight. Do you freeze? Sometimes procrastination's a good sign that you're under a lot of stress, the not doing anythingness. Or do you get aggressive? Do you fight? Do you become the alphanator and muscle your way through life? And sometimes all of those responses are needed. So we shouldn't demonize flight, fight, and freeze because it's kept humans alive for millennia. But in the Western world, especially when we're very safe, when that part of us is still operating most of our behaviors and most of our instincts, and we're responding to it, it can get bloody exhausting because your adrenals just burn out. As we're hanging here in our ragdoll, you might find that it's becoming intense. Now, if you can melt into it,
then cool. But if you can't, you need to rebound, take a squat rather than rushing up, and then gently come back into it. So this might be one of the more intense or challenging postures today. And so my question is, can you hold in stillness without needing to adjust, without needing to make yourself comfortable, by just observing and breathing? So part of equanimity is about being able to do what needs to happen, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's challenging. So much of our current Western life is about increasing my sense of comfort with the world. You know, the Facebook algorithm agrees with my opinion, so I feel comfortable, so I don't have to be challenged to think for myself. I've got the comfy woolen covers on my bucket seats in my car so that my bum doesn't need to get hot in the sun. And I eat comfort foods when I'm feeling down and upset about myself. And again, some of that sometimes is really nice. But sometimes it makes us think that we can really control the world and everything in it to our liking. And that's a problem. That's a modern problem. So back in the olden days when we're a bit more subsistence, we just knew that hard work is what you needed to do to put the food on the table. And part of that was toiling out in the sun, turning the soil, planting the seeds and being patient and waiting for the crop to come through. And in these years where the storms came in and took away the crop, we had to barter. We had to win people's favor. And so these days with our consumerist society, we can put everything on credit cards and delay the pain and delay the payment and bring food from the other side of the globe. And again, some of that is really nice. I'm not demonizing it. I'm just saying that we've a lot of the time forgotten that to get what we want and what we need in life sometimes requires us to be a little bit uncomfortable as we change. All right, 3 more rounds of breath. And to rebound, we're going to take a squat. So gently pop the bolster underneath your bum and have a seat. Turn the toes out. Let the arms come in between and turn the palms up to the sky. So we're just taking a gentle squat rebound. If you need to lengthen the spine, go for it. But otherwise, if you can just hang there with a little bit of roundness just until the blood pressure rebounds and the rebound takes effect. All right. So the next one we're going to take is a lunge. And again, I call this one King Arthur because you got options. First option is to take a T-bar with your bolster, with your blocks, and grab your bolster in hand so that you can get used to it. Now, if you don't have a couch behind me, you can put your knee on the floor up against a wall, or if there's a kitchen bench behind you, you can use that. And we're going to take the right foot forward and the left knee, we're going to slide it right up against the couch, or you can put a bolster underneath the foot just to bring the foot up a little bit. We're going to take the T-bar and place it underneath our right buttocks so that we're supported in a lunge. So this is a deep hip flexor release here. If that's no good for you, you can just take a simple lunge out onto the floor like so. Have the T-bar underneath your bum, hands out onto the knee, or you can pop a pillow or a bolster underneath so that you kind of see how you're propping up the foot here slightly. The idea is to get quite solidly into the hip flexor as well as towards your psoas as well. And as you start to open up, you might find that you can release the blocks down onto a single block. You might use a bolster, pull it in, so you've got a bit of support there. Or you can use a chair next to you to give you some stability. All right. So Jack Cornfield says that equanimity arises when we accept things the way that they are. So in Yang Yoga, in Yang Yoga, it gives us that kind of, feeling that we can push through life and we can create change in the world outside of ourselves. And sometimes that's really needed. But Yin Yoga is particularly about acceptance. So it's about feeling something and just gently and softly leaning in. So it's not about pushing, it's not about forcing. And it's the same with equanimity. Equanimity is about accepting the way things are without the desire, the overwhelming desire to have to take immediate reaction. So with practice, this can happen quite instantaneously in the moment. You feel the impulse to react in anger, for example. You can catch that feeling. You can take a breath and observe, and then choose the next right action. Now, it takes practice. And I remember hearing Thich Nhat Hanh talk about this to Oprah Winfrey, and Oprah saying, but, you're a Buddhist monk. You're a famous Buddhist monk for going through incredible adversity. Do you still feel anger? Do you still feel those things? And he said, yes, of course, I'm human. I feel deeply anger from time to time, but I catch myself and I bring myself back to center. I have a practice, and that's the point of my practice. So that when I catch myself, I come back to center, and then I can choose the next right action or inaction. I can choose not to react until perspective comes. And so that's been my experience with equanimity, is that it's given me a pause button where in the past I would have reacted, created a mess, and then had to clean it up and got very upset at the mess that I've created. And back in the olden days, I'd cast judgment about everyone that was involved in the mess that I created, as if they had some role in it, as if I wasn't the one that made it happen. And therein lies the suffering, All right, so rebounding out of here, press into the front foot firstly to create some stability and come to a kneeling position. Straighten the front leg, bring your knees down into a kneeling position, and just take the rebound in a seated kneeling. And just wait for the sensation to pass before we swap sides. All right, let's swap sides. So taking the left foot forward, make your T-bar for the left bum. Take the right knee back against the wall or couch or onto your bolster, or as you wish. Sit into that. You can use the bolster, bring it into the body. So I saw this little hashtag in a few memes on the interweb, hashtag unfuckwithable. And I thought, yeah, I know what they're trying to say there. They're trying to, it's a very millennial thing to say, oh, nothing really upsets me. I'm cool, man. I'm cool with it. And there's a difference between I'm cool with it and equanimity. Equanimity is like, I'm not cool with it. I know that. But I choose
this set of action rather than reaction. When it's like, I'm cool with it, it means I am apathetic. I don't really care. I'm forcing myself to throw it in the I feel nothing place, which essentially is suppression of emotion. And what happens with that is that the more we stuff down, the more blows up later on, and it usually comes out in physical disease or emotional disease. You know, the disconnect that we have from ourselves and from each other. And then we go to the doctor, they give us some sort of medication to help get us through this place that we've created. And if it's, you know, an antidepressant or a blocker, then it pauses your evolution until the point where you're ready to deal with the stuff that you've stuffed down anyway. And I'm not against medication, don't get me wrong. I'm not against needing to do those things to carry on. Prolonging it for years on end, I'm against that. It's a step to doing the work. It's not the work itself. So with anything, medication can be very important to getting us functional, but then we need to do the work that needs to happen so that it can maintain. There's a whole industry, very, very powerful industry. I think it's the most powerful industry in the world. Drugs, you know, designed to augment pleasure or to relieve us of pain. And being somebody who's gone through a recovery of back injury, I had to stop that medication so that I could feel the pain, because I kept injuring myself, kept pretending it wasn't there. And so therein lies this whole idea around acceptance is equanimity. It's when I accept myself the way that I am, I'm going to do the honest work that I need to get where I want to be, and I'm going to respect what I find along the way. But if I try and short circuit it, cheat my way through, the body keeps the score. All right, gently press into the front foot. Take a kneeling position. Rebound. Let it go. Release into your seat. And just observe what you find. All right, so the next one I've got for us today is coming into deer pose, or, you know, a version of bent leg, half pigeon. There's so many different ways to call it. Swan, I've heard people call this swan. So we're going to take the bolster out in front of us, the pillow. We're going to put the blocks out in front of that. You're going to sit on the pillow with your right shin out in front as if you were getting ready for half pigeon. So you're taking the knee out towards the right side, but my left leg's bent. So internal rotation of the back leg, external rotation of the front leg. And then from there, I'm going to put my pressure into my bolster to help me sit up nice and tall until these internal adductors start to release so that I can descend my seat. And then I feel the pressure going into the external rotators on the right top side of the hip and the glute med and the piriformis. And then I'm going to come forward onto the bolsters, onto the blocks. So if you've heard that phrase, what we resist persists. So the things that we don't want in our life, when we try and fight them, it's the hilarious thing when you hear these phrases, the war on drugs. It's like the war on drugs create more drugs. That's just the deal. You know, when you add resistance, equal and opposite things happen. That's the way it works. So it's the same thing inside of us.
when we're trying to process our anxiety, when we fight against it, we stop it, we try and control it, when we try and force ourselves to be all right, the opposite tends to happen. We tend to get more wound up, or we have these blowouts where you find yourself heavily medicated a couple of days later and wonder, how did that happen? You know, or at least I used to. So the process of embracing what it is that you find, listening to what it's telling you, and then taking the steps to nurture and to love yourself, to accept what's going on there. Suddenly you find this gentle space of release start to come up. But it's when we go into judgment around what it is that we find. I shouldn't be anxious. I shouldn't be stressed. I shouldn't be sore. I shouldn't have a pain in my back. I should be like this. I shouldn't be. And as one of my teachers, Susie, says, stop shooting on yourself. You know, it's the shooting on yourself that makes things worse. So that's with the stuff that we don't want. That's the stuff that we're trying to stop in our life. But what about the stuff that you do want? Like, have you ever had experience of suffering from addiction, or, you know, overdoing something that you love to the point where you don't really love it very much anymore? You know, you decide that you love a certain sort of food, you eat it so much that you turn yourself off it. You know, this is the same sort of thing. It's this grasping towards what we do want until all the joy's gone from it. And then there's just the grasping that's left. So it's William Blake that says, he who binds himself to joy, the winged life does destroy. But he who kisses the joys that flies lives in eternity's sunrise. So this is the wisdom of addiction. And whether we're suffering from addiction or unaware of our addictive tendencies, human beings are habit-creating machines. It's when the habits become unmanageable, or when they become dangerous, self-deprecating, or limiting, that we need to start looking at it. And that's what yoga is. Yoga is observing these layers, these vritti, and deciding which ones we keep and which ones can go. And that's the process of going through the layers of the onion. Slowly press on up into a crossed leg. Bring the back leg around. Rebound in a seated crossed leg position. Feeling the sensations pass. All right, gently take the back leg, right leg back, left leg's out in front of us, hands on the bolster, sit up nice and tall. Give yourself a moment just to feel the rebound, feel the hips descend. And then gently coming forward. So when you're in your practice of yoga asana, everyone's got their favorites and their nemesis poses, you know, just because all of our bodies are so different. Baron Baptiste loves to say this thing, you know, it's like, right now you're dreaming of the next posture. You're wondering which one's next because you want the next one so bad, but how do you know that the next one's going to be any better? Or another thing that comes up is the grass is always greener on the other side because it rains more over there. So another big part of equanimity is about practicing contentment for this moment. If it's just discomfort, can it just be discomfort without you needing to do anything about it? Can you recalibrate your connection with discomfort, knowing the discomfort is the feeling of growth happening? It's the sensation of growth. Being challenged with my thoughts and my ideas expands my mind. Being challenged in my physical body expands my strength and my flexibility. Being challenged spiritually grows my experience of connection with life. Another Baron Baptiste quote is, "Will you survive your comfort zone?" Here for about another 3 full rounds of breath. And on the final exhale, press your hands into the blocks, swing the right leg up and around into a seated cross-leg rebound. Sit up nice and tall and just let the weight recenter. Cool. So make sure you got your strap handy because we're going to use that in 2 postures time. Take the bolster right at the small of your lower back, your sacrum, and we're going to take reclining butterfly. So soles of the feet together, pull it right up and then lean back. And as you lean back, pull the shoulder blades together so that you can open the arms nice and wide. So we want to get a good arm reach. So we get a nice stretch and release through the chest. You might want to take your hands and slide them underneath your head. You might want to take your hands and slide them underneath your bolster. And then that'll work more into your shoulders and your pec minor. So just finding a place where there's that gentle edge and melt into it. So where equanimity is really useful is when you're hot-wired, when you're triggered. So have you ever walked into a shop with no intention of buying something and walked out with arms full of shopping bags and just gone, how the hell did I just drop $400 or $500? And then when you look back and think about it, that salesman was really endearing. They said you looked fantastic and all that stuff. They played to your ego. They connected with you. They're just doing their job. And a good salesman isn't trying to sell you anything. A good salesman is just trying to find what your deep needs are and connect with it to see if they can help fulfill that. And the big word here is needs. Your needs. So that's connected straight up to your desire, isn't it? And so in yoga, detachment, I say that practicing fulfilling my needs is like honey in the beginning and poison in the end. But practicing my austerity, my tapas, my restraint is like poison in the beginning. It's a little bit hard, but it's like nectar in the end. So without equanimity, that process is hopeless. So without being able to
say, look, that person's really nice and they're saying all the lovely things and it would be great, but I just don't have budget for that at the moment. So thank you. And the same thing goes on the other way. Somebody says something that you don't like. And a lot of the time this happens between different cultures. Like, I've got a friend of mine who's German, and the way she sees the world is very matter of fact. It's very clinical. It's very as it is, And sometimes when she says things, she's not saying it to offend anyone or thinking that it's going to cause any problems. But some people can take offense because, maybe emotionally they find what that thought was cold. And so in that person's culture, it's actually warm-hearted to be very clinically true. And in someone else's culture, it might be cold-hearted because it's much nicer to soften those truths with pleasantry or avoid some of those truths only to have that conversation in very private places. So culturally, sometimes we can get triggered and we can react towards somebody when underlying that person was trying to be kind, underlying that person was trying to connect with us in a very authentic way. And it's because of our upbringing, our culture, and our triggers that we get angry. And so knowing what your triggers are helps you stop, breathe, and consider that person's perspective for one moment before you let both guns blaze, before you create a mess that you got to spend lots of involved emotional conversation trying to clean up just to understand that person's point of view. So equanimity helps us grow compassion. All right, gently scoop the knees together, roll to one side, and as you go over, pop your strap all the way over your body and take it behind your lower back. So it's like a giant seatbelt, and lie onto your back into Shavasana so that it's already there and waiting as you lie down flat. All right, so cat pulling its tail with the strap around your belly, around your waist, like so. Gently roll onto your right side. So I'm going to turn towards you so I can see what's going on. So rolling to the right side here. I'm bending the right leg and I'm placing the strap around my right foot and over my right shoulder, like a seatbelt. Then I extend my left leg forward and my left shoulder back. So I'm in a twisting position. So for those of us that are a bit more flexible, you might want to pistol grip the left toe with the right hand. You might want to pistol grip the right toe with the left hand. Or you might want to, with your buckle, shorten the strap to make the stretch of the cat pulling its tail a little more intense. So if you wanted to do that, you just thread the strap through the buckle until you have the appropriate amount of activation. So a good thing about using the seatbelt option is I don't need to hold myself here. So we've got a bit of lumbar spine release. You've also got the outer fascia of the outside of the hips. You've got a thoracic twist. So if your shoulder blades are down, there's your twist there. If it's too strong, bend the top knee or place blocks underneath the top knee or the top shin just to give yourself a bit of support from over rotating. So one of the things that I've been exploring over the past couple of years is understanding this voice dialogue with our inner families. And so sub-personalities, inner families, different layers of belief that we create along our life that are stored inside of our psyche and our conscious and subconscious mind and patterns, and learning to balance those with a thing called emotional gym. And so when those triggers are coming up, those hot-wired triggers, they're usually protectors that we created when we were quite young. So it's when we get that really irrational, heated, knee-jerk reaction stuff that we know we shouldn't probably be engaged in, but we struggle being able to pull ourselves back from. And so the process is not about trying to let go of that part. The process is actually communicating with it. Hello, what do you do for Cameron? What's your job? And then actually letting that part of yourself speak. And then coming back into the middle chair where you're an adult and talking from the adult point of view about your relationship with this part of yourself. And then the balancing aspect is about leaning into an energy that is the opposite. So remember, when we're talking about equanimity, there's always an equal and opposite energy created. So that trigger part of you has got a sub-personality or a balancing opposite. And sometimes we've dismissed the balancing opposite in ourselves because it wasn't allowed in our family when we were growing up. So a good example of this is the trigger that's really angry, and the balancing opposite might be healthy anger. So sometimes that part of us that gets triggered and all that suppressed energy comes out like an explosion. Sometimes to balance it out needs a tempered, more adult voice that can come in and say, you know what? A healthy boundary is needed, but we don't need to kick and scream and cry about it. We just need to assert ourselves. And sometimes when we were younger, that part of us about asserting healthy boundaries might not have been allowed to have had a voice. Maybe it wasn't allowed in your family. And so because of that, that part of us is dismissed. And this energy work is about bringing it in and honoring it. So the other one, the one that gets explosive, can take a rest. Because he's got a job to do. He tells us that there's some boundaries that are being broken that we need to take some action on. And it's about being able to choose how I respond rather than letting that young personality drop firebombs everywhere. Gently release back into center. Unhook the back leg, roll onto your back and take a rebound with the strap around the waist. So if you know you're going to need some support because you don't want to twist too deeply, pop the blocks or the bolsters over to the left-hand side. And this time we're going to roll over onto our left hip. Take the bottom leg, the left leg, and bend it. Take the strap around the foot. And then take the strap up over the left shoulder and extend the right leg up and away. Again, if you wanted to pistol grip the right foot with the left hand, you can do that. I like to look up to the sky or towards the twist in yin. So as opposed to yang style where we look the opposite direction, just because it's kind of on our cervical spine. Again, if you need to shorten the strap to make it a little bit more active, go for that.
you need to bend the top leg or prop it up, support it, go for that. So simple ways of creating equanimity. Just come to practice, come to yoga practice and practicing yoga as it should be practiced with Sthira Sukha Asanam, the balance of strength and ease, coming to yin and just finding your edge and not pushing it too hard. Learning to breathe when you're getting triggered. So pranayama, when your unmanageable triggers are starting to heat, so you can self-regulate and self-soothe. Vagus nerve, learning to release, to tune, to let go of the vagus nerve is really, really useful. Practicing yoga with your abhyasa and vairagya, your daily practice with dispassion. It's just something you do. It's not super special. It's not got any goals except for the goal of balancing you as you practice yoga. All of those little things that come out of the Patanjali Sutras, those little ways of practicing yoga properly, they grow in culture, our inner equanimity, so that then when we're not on the yoga mat, when we're in the outside world, our capacity to make better decisions increases. And the side effect is we have a more aligned experience of life. And the sensation of pain, the growing pains, is just us noticing the layers of the onion as they fall, rather than running into brick walls from the lack of awareness. We're just aware of the gentle pain of old ways falling. And we can sit with it without needing to medicate it. Because, when those pains are growing pains, they're good growing pains from becoming more aware. When you medicate it, you just put band-aids on it and it takes longer for those onion layers to fall. So learning to sit with discomfort of growth just allows us to unfold like a flower in bloom. Gently release back into center and just releasing the strap. We won't use that anymore. Lie on your back. Our final one is going to be a Viparita Karani, so feet up a wall pose. So take the bolster next to your bum. Bring your heels in, lift your hips, place it underneath your bum, and take your legs up to the sky. Just a little drain there to balance things off for our last pose. And the wonderful thing about yin and what we're doing today is we're bringing ourselves back to center. The experience of the fascia expanding during the stressing and then coming back into the middle is just this continual reminding of where our center is. And the more we have that touchstone, the more when we're drawn towards or away from things in our life, the more we remember, there's a center. There's center. Come home with the breath. And the more I do that, the more relief I get from the layers that used to cause suffering. The more easy it is to practice contentment. And the less desire rules the pendulum of life. Very gently bring the feet down. Lift your bum, slide the bolster out, and slowly make your way up into a seated position. Roll to one side. Have a seat on the bolster, kneeling or cross-legged, however you like to finish. Hands in the lap, thumbs to touch, eyes closed. So your practice this week, if you choose to accept it, is to notice when you're getting hot-wired, triggered towards or away from something. Take a breath and make the next right action. Taking one chant of Om to honor ourselves, each other, and the practice of yoga that grows our equanimity. For Om chanting, big breath in. Hands to heart, press palm. Bow the head to fingertips with honor to ourselves and to each other. Together we say, Namaste.